No amount of marketing words, cool, colors, shapes or similar can change the laws of physics. That's an important thing to understand. Briefly, in short, this video will answer the following questions. What is the realistic amount of protection you could expect from a cycling helmet? And what kind of helmet you should look for? So the video, as all of my articles and videos, has a table of contents visible in the description and on the timeline, so you can skip to the parts of interest. And this is chapter 1, introduction and a disclaimer. To make it crystal clear, this is not about advocating for or against helmets. It's about helping you understand the risks and making an informed decision by yourself for yourself. Over the past decades, I did a lot of research and experimenting and had dozens of falls, and everything I say in this video is based on my experience and my knowledge and education, and that's as far as it goes, so the best that I know at this time. When I gain new information, I will post updates, and I have an article with this script and photos, so I will link to that article in the video description and make it pop up in your top right hand corner. So with that out of the way, to understand safety measures and equipment, including helmets, we must understand some basic physics. I'll start with that, explaining it in layman's terms, and using analogies. That's how I like things explained to me. By the end, you will understand how and why it all boils down to speed change over time. Chapter 2, action and reaction and energy preservation. The point of this chapter is that there is a ton of marketing drivel out there, and understanding the basic physics can help you see through that and have realistic expectations. We will start with the action and reaction. Newton's third law of motion states that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. You see, when I press my finger against a wall with a certain force, the wall also exerts the same amount of force back to my finger, and I can feel it as tactile pressure. That is the reaction in touchable terms. So, if I push hard against a wall or the floor, since they are pretty heavy and hard, the reaction force will result in me moving away from them. If I push a light-wheeled cart, the cart will move away from me and in the opposite direction of the one I'm pushing from, of course. This last example touches upon inertia and kinetic energy that I'll explain in a bit, but before that I'll explain the law of energy preservation. The law of energy preservation says that energy can't disappear nor be created out of nothing, but it can only transform from one form to another. It will be simpler. This is the definition. It may sound scary. So, when I press against the wall, that energy is converted into pressure. If I push on a wheeled cart, the energy is transformed into kinetic energy of the cart. If I compress a spring, the energy is converted into spring's potential energy, and the spring is compressed and ready to spring out, pun intended. What has this got to do with helmets, you may ask? Well, safety equipment can't make the impact energy disappear. It can't alter the laws of physics, so remember that, and it will come in play later. Now, chapter 3, inertia and mass. What is this about? Inertia and mass are crucial for understanding how our body and brain, liver and other organs behave in a crash. If we put a bicycle and a car on a flat paved road and put the car in neutral and disengage the handbrake, of course, neither of them will move. Even if there is slight wind, they won't move that easily. Gravity is pulling them all right, but since they are on level ground, the gravity won't help us move them. They will stay in place. Now, We can easily push a bicycle, walking or running with it, no problems. We can also stop as we are moving it whenever we want to, relatively easily, without even using the bicycle's brakes, just pulling it to a stop. A car, on the other hand, it would take some effort for a strong person to push a car to move up to even a walking speed. You can try that in a safe area, of course, if you haven't tried to push start a car ever. Likewise, if we saw the car that we are pushing and we gain some speed is heading towards a lamppost or something similar, unless there's someone in the cabin to press the brakes, we would have a hard time pulling a car to a stop very quickly. It would take some effort even to pull it to a stop from a walking speed. So there is a difference. And why is that? Why is there such a great difference between a car and a bicycle? It's because of a thing called inertia. We define inertia as, again, it is scary, but I'll explain it in layman terms. Every physical body maintains its state of motion until a force acts upon it. That's Newton's first law of motion. Let me explain. The state of motion can be still or moving at a certain speed, to put it simply. Without inertia, a bicycle would stop moving as soon as we stop pedaling or as we stop pushing it. But we know for a fact that inertia works. If we get up to speed before a hill, the bike will keep moving for a while, even uphill, even if we stop pedaling, until the gravity pulls it to a stop. The same goes for trying to move a stationary bike. Though it is more easily noticeable with a car, the amount of inertia we need to overcome to get it to start rolling. Why is it more difficult to push or stop a car compared to a bicycle? Okay, car is heavier, but we are on a flat ground and the gravity shouldn't be playing any part in this. If we don't touch them, they won't move even. So gravity is not. So if it's not the weight, then does the car have a higher inertia? Oh yes, definitely. Inertia is directly proportional to mass. Car's mass is about 1,000 kilograms, and that's about 100 times greater than the mass of a bicycle at about 10 kilograms, give or take a few. That's why it takes some effort to push a car from a standstill, while it is trivial to do the same with a bicycle. Side note, when gravity affects mass, we call it weight. But the weight changes to zero when we are in space, while the mass always remains the same. So weight is mass affected by gravity, and mass is inherent and doesn't change. Let's go on with another fun aspect of physics. Chapter 4, Kinetic Energy and Area of Impact. We're getting closer to the main point. Understanding kinetic energy makes all the difference when discussing protective equipment and even active safety. After all, it's not speeding that kills you, it is the sudden stopping, to use some dark humor. To drive a nail in a wood, we would take a hammer, put it on the nail's head, and we could press it with all our strength and weight, just pressing on the hammer. That would not work very well, of course. However, if we use a flick of our wrist and get the hammer's head up to speed, we can easily, without much effort and without using much muscle, hammer in the nail into wood. Why is that? Hammer's head is a lot lighter than our whole body. So if we lean against with our whole body and it's not working, and we just flick hammer and it works. The answer is kinetic energy. By getting the hammer's head up to speed, thanks to its lever, so we can with a small movement make it move in a lot larger arc and get a lot of speed, the hammer's mass remains the same when we get it up to speed. Its inertia is the same. However, its kinetic energy increases exponentially by the power of 2 of speed, or speed squared. The formula for kinetic energy is 1/2 of mass multiplied by squared speed or velocity. We measure and express energy, including the kinetic energy, in joules. The same applies in reverse, and that's important. If we reduce the speed by half, the kinetic energy of the impact would be decreased to 1/4. We'll get back to this in a bit. Chapter 5, area of impact. This matters for reasons that will soon be obvious, and I will explain why motorcycle helmets have a hard outer shell, and the same goes for snowmobiles and downhill helmets that are really for downhill cycling. So we all know that using the nail upside down, and so hitting the pointy bit with the hammer and having the hammer's head, which is wide, put against the wood, doesn't really work. Why is that? It's the same kinetic energy of our hammer, it's the same hardness of wood, that hasn't changed. It is because the nail's head is a lot wider than its tip, and so it spreads the impact that we make with the hammer over a wider area. Similarly, if we push against the wall strongly with only one finger, it could hurt. If we push with the same force, using open palms of both hands, both arms, the pressure at any part of our hands is a lot lower, and there's no pain. So it hurts less when we spread an impact over a wider area. That's good to know. Motorcycle helmets and some other protective equipment have a hard outer shell for precisely that reason. Even if you hit a curb, the impact of its sharp edge will be spread over a wider area instead of piercing your skull or some other organ. Of course, most protective equipment also has some kind of cushion. Let's dive into that now. So, Chapter 6, how do cushions work? This should help you understand why protective gear is often bulky. So, we already know that spreading the same impact over a wider area helps reduce the force on any given part of that area. What happens if we make the impact energy take more time to transfer? And what do I mean by that? If my math is correct, when an average man slips and falls flat on the ground, the impact energy is about 1000 joules. With those 1000 joules of energy, if I put my hands up straight, elbows locked, and drop into push-up position, I am highly likely to hurt my palms and break a bone or two. If I do the same thing but bend my elbows to cushion the blow and use my muscles a bit, I will be fine. Same height, same kinetic energy, but different results. How exactly does that happen? With my arms locked, the stopping distance when I hit the ground is practically 0 meters. And all the impact energy gets into my body in an instant and bad things happen. Cushioning with my arms makes the total 1000 joules of energy transfer last a lot longer. I'm increasing the stopping distance to about 25 centimeters. So I'm increasing the stopping distance, and thus the time that the total energy transfer takes. I'm increasing it to about 100 milliseconds. So buying myself just the extra 0.1 seconds makes the difference between broken bones and safe landing, maybe with a bit of bruised palms. I use some rounded averages to do the calculations, and physicists and mathematicians are welcome to correct me on the exact figures, but the principles are still the same. Now, an important caveat is that my muscles must be strong to provide good resistance. If my hands are weak, I will slow down just to a degree if I don't manage to completely absorb it, but start pushing, but then let go. So I will decrease the total 1000 joules of energy, but not to 0, so I could still get hurt. Cushions and protective equipment and helmets work in a similar way. They increase the stopping distance and make the total kinetic energy transfer take just a split second longer. They mustn't be too hard or firm, because that is the equivalent of having locked elbows and straight hands. But they mustn't be too soft either, because they will compress too quickly, too easily, instead of absorbing a bit more of kinetic energy of the impact. As I said at the start, it boils down to time and distance. There is no magic material that can save you from decelerating too fast. You need certain thickness in order to provide enough distance, which equals time, which equals reduced kinetic energy impacting you at any given time. Human body, chapter 7. A wise man knows his limits. Our bodies protect us by enclosing the brain in a hard skull, someone's knocking, and using the rib cage and stomach muscles to safeguard our sensitive internal organs. That works pretty well, but it's not ideal. For example, the brain is suspended inside the skull. It floats in a jelly-like substance called cerebrospinal fluid. That's a spacey term. That's basically the fluid that cushions minor blows and vibrations, so we don't get concussions when we are just walking or jumping or running. Yet, if the head and the skull stops too abruptly, even if the bones don't break, the brain will continue moving. The brain inside in that jelly will continue moving because of inertia that we discussed earlier, and it will hit against the skull, causing a concussion or worse. Of course, if the skull breaks, the brain can get cut against the broken skull too, which makes it even worse. But even if the skull doesn't break, we can still get brain injury or just concussion. The same happens when the skull moves too abruptly. When we get hit when stationary, and you can ask Mike Tyson for more details. When we're talking about Mike Tyson, the skull and the cerebrospinal fluid do a better job of protecting the brain from translatory movement, so hits like this, than they do from protecting it from the movement of rotational movement of the skull relative to the brain. That would be a quick rotation. That is why a punch in the face just breaks your nose, but an uppercut in the chin rotates your head very quickly and knocks you out. Because of that, the brain is stationary, the head moves very quickly, and it doesn't fare very well. All the brain connections to the nervous system practically get yanked, and we'll get back to that in a bit. For now, we can conclude that the skull does a pretty good job at distributing the force of impact over a wider area, because it's hard, and cushioning the blows thanks to that jelly liquid inside our head. But only to a degree. We can use helmets for extra protection, which leads us to the following chapter. Chapter 8. Bicycle versus motorcycle helmets. Have you ever wondered why motorcycle riders and racers don't wear bicycle helmets? Let's dive into that, shall we? I'll start by comparing the two. The visor of a road motorcycle helmet shields the rider from the wind, allowing them to see and hear better and avoiding being blinded and deafened by strong winds. But that's a topic for a separate discussion, because we don't spend much time at speeds over 40 miles an hour on bicycles. What about other safety features? First, there is a hard outer shell made of reinforced plastic to keep it light for comfort but strong for impacts, and the shell is round and smooth, and it sort of melts with the shoulders, especially if you also have a protective jacket and that back protection extra, the hump. The protective back pads, if you wear them, they will also nicely blend in, and the helmet is designed to slide easily over pavement or other areas, and to turn direct blows into glancing impacts whenever possible. So it will slide and it will make things glance off if at all possible. It covers and protects the entire head, face, chin, cheeks, temples, complete back of the head, everything. Cushioning padding inside is pretty thick. The helmet fits snugly around the entire head, pressing even against the cheeks. This helps the helmet stay braced in place even in a crash, and assures that all the bulk of the helmet works to protect the rider, because air gaps add to the size and volume but don't provide any cushioning. So if I have an air gap, when I hit, this is no cushioning until I reach the suspension, and then it starts working. So it's better to have all neatly tied to the head, so that the entire area of the helmet is used for cushioning the blows if it is already that size. Air gaps, as I wrote in the script, air gaps add to size and volume but don't provide any cushioning unless we are talking about special airbags. That's it. Good motorbike helmets are tied with a double D ring, assuring that the helmet stays in place when buckled, instead of relying on a plastic clip to keep it in place. Double D straps are self-tightening. When you pull on a helmet, they won't unlock. You need to move it aside and without trying to pull on a helmet off in order to unbuckle. When I was racing motorcycles, you weren't allowed on a track without a certified helmet with a double D ring strap, and those that had just click plastic stuff were not considered safe. There is a standard testing and certification regulation, DOT in the United States, ECE 22.06 in the European Union, and the less official but arguably better US SNEL M 2020 certificate and UK's SHARP tests, awesome, just to name a few. High quality downhill bicycle helmets are a lot like the here described motorcycle helmets, but how do the normal road and mountain bike cycling helmets compare to those? The outer shell is not as hard and strong and has huge gaps for ventilation, otherwise we would risk a stroke when cycling up hills in the summer. So they don't protect very well against sharp object impacts, like hitting a curb's edge. It doesn't gradually narrow down to the neck and shoulders, but it protrudes a bit compared to the rider's head, or around the head's midsection vertically. So it poses more risk of catching onto stuff and causing more head rotation. It covers only the top of the head and a bit of the sides, forehead and back, but not nearly all the way. The face is completely unprotected. Cushioning padding is usually not nearly as thick. That's what we talked about cushioning before. Helmet fits around just the top of the head, far from the best possible bracing for impact. I've never seen a bicycle helmet with a double D buckle. It's usually just a plastic clip used to keep the helmet locked. Safety standards are not nearly as rigorous, and practically every cycling helmet would fail any serious motorcycle helmet crash testing. Hence, you never know what you're really buying. Though I'll discuss this a bit more in a bit. Could we add more padding to a cycling helmet? We could, but that would make it heavier, causing maybe some neck pains, and it would reduce ventilation and cause a heat stroke in the summer, and more likely make it more likely to catch on to stuff when we fall and slide over something, and that might cause more injury because of the head's rotation sudden, as I explained earlier. So it's a compromise. Cycling helmet is a compromise. It is the least bad thing we can do to improve safety, at least to a very small degree. Briefly put, a high quality motorcycle helmet offers several times better protection compared to a high quality cycling helmet. To be even more blunt, you could think of your cycling helmet as a slightly improved baseball cap. Why am I saying this, and am I exaggerating? Well, how many times have you heard or thought or said, "I would not ride there without a helmet"? People usually say that when they assess the risks and conclude there is a chance of an accident and serious injury. That's perfectly reasonable. The unreasonable part is expecting a decent cycling helmet to prevent serious injuries. My advice would be either wear a proper full-face downhill or motorcycle helmet, or ride more slowly and less risky. Cycling helmets can help to a degree, but they don't provide the protection we are led to believe they do by various manufacturers and safety advocates. You may be safer by being more careful and cautious without a helmet than by making more risks with a helmet while overestimating its level of protection. Before any keyboard warrior starts shooting now, I am not telling you to not wear a helmet. I am saying to take as much precaution as you would be taking without a helmet, or if possible without getting a heat stroke. When you're taking more risks, wear a full face helmet that really protects you. Of course, every little helps, so it makes sense to get the best helmet with all the afore explained limitations, which leads us to chapter 9, best or the least bad cycling helmets. I don't sell or advertise helmets and have no way of testing every single model out there. Still, I'll try to give you some general guides and recommendations. Look for helmets that come in several different shell sizes for different head sizes. One-size-fits-all helmets are bulky and, unless your head is the XL size, will be needlessly protruding too far out and increasing the risk of catching onto something and causing more injury by twisting the head. Helmet sizes come usually like shirts, like t-shirts, S, M, L, XL and so on. And one size is usually made for a range of plus minus 2 centimeters with a certain head size, head circumference. It's measured 2 centimeters above the eyebrows, the widest area. Choose models that are tapered at the ends, so they are more likely to slide and less likely to catch onto stuff. So this one has decent taper on the sides. On the front it's pretty sharp, and on the rear it's complete nonsense, this design, at least in my opinion and experience. So the ones that look less aero, less super duper, are usually a better design in terms of shape. Check the Virginia Tech helmet ratings and helmets.org for some info on the tested models. The article I wrote has links to those, so you can look in the video's description. Sorry about the disruption. Sorry about the interruption. Where was I? Test if the helmet fits your head properly. Once you mount the helmet, tighten its adjustment. This one has one on the back for adjustment. Fasten the strap, and you should not be able to move the helmet easily if you just push it off your forehead upwards and towards the back. It should stay put without strangling you with its strap. So that's basically some general advice. For the other stuff, look into those articles, look into those websites that I will link in the article that discusses this in the video's description. Now, chapter 10, Mythbusting. This part is not intended to discourage you from wearing a cycling helmet. It is intended to discourage you from taking risks that would require a real full-face helmet for protection. So, with that in mind, let's begin. Myth number 1. Helmet saved my life. Helmet saved my life statement is often followed by a picture of a cracked helmet. Helmets, even the cycling ones, do make a difference. There's no arguing that. However, I've explained the physics and limitations of cycling helmets. So, if a person didn't end up with a severe concussion, the impact was most probably not strong enough to be fatal, with or without a helmet. A great telling sign is the helmet's material. If it is squashed, then the helmet did soak up some kinetic energy and made a difference. But if the helmet is just cracked and split open, like a watermelon, without being squashed, then it didn't take much of the impact energy. It couldn't have. Nonetheless, it's physics. Nonetheless, helmets do make a difference, and sometimes that can be the narrow line between a serious and a fatal injury. Just have realistic expectations and don't overestimate their power of protection. Myth number 2. Helmets can make injuries worse. I've heard this one too often, really. Some people advocate against helmets by claiming they can make injuries worse. Sure, there might be a scenario in which a good helmet can make some injuries a bit worse, but the probability of a helmet reducing injuries instead of making them worse is about 1 billion times higher. The only scenario in which a helmet can really make things worse is if you take higher risks expecting the helmet to keep you safe. Because cycling helmets are in the better than nothing category as far as protection goes, but they are still better, still are better than nothing. Myth number 3, MIPS, Mips, MIPS. I must mention the famous Mips. Mips stands for Multi-Directional Impact Protection System. It's a super spacey marketing term. The basic idea is that you have a mesh on the inside of your helmet that is placed against your head, so added inside like a layer. And it's against your head, tied to the helmet with some very weak links, and then in an impact, if the helmet tries to turn, if you have some angular impact, the weak links holding the mesh with the helmet tied will break, so the mesh will stay on your head and the helmet will rotate around the mesh because the mesh is made to be slippery against the helmet when those weak connections break. And it will allow the helmet to rotate by about 1 centimeter of movement. So I've already explained the danger of sudden head rotation, and Mips should be cool, right? Well, yes and no. First of all, the Mips mesh takes some space, which means a bulkier helmet or less cushioning material. You can't have your cake and eat it. You're taking some extra space with that mesh. A bulkier helmet is more likely to get caught against stuff when you slide and provides a longer lever for rotating your head even stronger, faster. That's bad. Less cushioning if we go the other way without making the helmet bulkier, and reduce cushioning to make room for the Mips mesh. That means more kinetic energy goes to your head because there's less cushion and less energy gets soaked up by the helmet. So there is a price, not just in terms of money when it comes to Mips, and they are more expensive helmets. Also, fair to note, helmets can rotate even without the famous Mips, unless you have no hair and your scalp is 100% dry of any sweat. Ironically, Mips mesh can also pull on your hair when you're trying to remove helmet and cause some scalp cuts in a crash if you are bald. To make the matters worse, too much helmet rotation can be just as bad as no helmet rotation. For different reasons, but the end result is that if you are looking to avoid injuries or reduce them, too much rotation also makes it bad as well, just as no rotation in a crash. Finally, Mips doesn't work very well in every crash scenario with every Mips helmet model. Yes, there are good Mips helmets out there, but there are also good helmets without that marketing buzzword. Mips is a registered trademark, so some folks get a lot of extra money from cyclists who buy Mips helmets, but the main point is that it is not proven to be more effective compared to the, well, good non-Mips cycling helmets. And this leads us to a conclusion. What are chapter 11, conclusion? What are the takeaways from all this? Pretty simple. Helmets can help you be safer, but only if you don't overestimate their level of protection when assessing risks. It makes sense to get a good cycling helmet, the little difference in the limited amount of protection can make a crucial difference in some scenarios. So again, this is not a video against nor pro cycling helmets. I am mainly trying to point out and help you be aware of the very little protection that cycling helmets provide, and use that when you are considering some trail or some kind of riding or some speed. Don't think, I have a helmet, now I'm safe, I can go 100 miles an hour downhill. If you would not do that without a cycling helmet, I would advise you to not do that with a cycling helmet. With a full face helmet and some very good body protection, you get more safety. Even then, you should still weigh out the risks, but they do offer a more serious level of security. But cycling helmets are not nearly as effective as cycling helmet salesmen and some safety advocates are trying to make us believe they are. That's the whole video. Thank you very much if you sat through all this. If you have any questions, comments or corrections, I would urge you to use the BikeGremlin.net forum. YouTube is very bad at searching and finding questions and answers and so on. If you like my work, you can support my work at patreon.com/BikeGremlin, and that's it. I will see you in some other video. Cheers, stay cool.